Hi. I know I probably look pretty ridiculous right now. I feel pretty ridiculous, but I would rather not show my face, not yet, on the internet. That remains to change in the future, so who knows when that'll happen. But I wanted to remake my previous Skinamarink video because I felt like I didn't really go into it with my thoughts organized. I took some time to really kind of look into the movie. There isn't really that much to go over in the movie itself. It's pretty basic, but I feel like I didn't really do that in the previous video that I made, so I wanted to remake this video with a proper thought process going into like the research and what I'm gonna say in this video. So again, here's the remake of the Skinamarink video I made about a year ago, I think it is now. So if you haven't seen Skinamarink and you clicked on this video, spoilers, obviously, and I would also advise you to go watch it. Just some information here. It was made in 2022 by a director called Kyle Edward Ball. It was made with a budget of $15,000. This movie, when you watch it, obviously, the budget isn't going to be, millions. So I guess 15,000 seems pretty appropriate for the type of movie that it is. If you're familiar with the director, he actually does have a YouTube channel where he's made similar videos to the actual movie. And I'll also be talking about a short movie that he's made on YouTube. It's called xethrocc, H-E-C-K, which is I guess a progenitor, a prequel. It's not like tied in the same story, but style-wise, it's like a prequel to the actual Skinamarink movie. So I'll actually be discussing that later on in the video. A little bit of information about the movie and the director, I guess the lore, the real-world lore of the movie, if you want to call it that. What we do is kind of just talk about the story of the movie. It's pretty small. It's not really grand or really in-depth, but if you look into it, it can get kind of deep. I'll be talking about the story. I won't be getting over-analyzing everything about the movie. I will be kind of going in-depth into some of the key points of the movie, which I think are pretty interesting. Even as I'm filming this right now, I kind of had, revelations about what certain things could mean and blah, blah, blah. But I'll talk about it once I get to that point. But again, I'm just kind of babbling at this point, so let's get into it. So as we see, when the movie opens up, we see a 1995. That's the year the movie takes place in. I don't think it's that significant to the plot of the movie itself, but I'll discuss that at the end of this analysis, because I do think it does have a significance outside of the movie, not inside the movie, but like I said, later on. We see two kids playing in the middle of the night, which, isn't out of the usual. I've done it before. I'm sure you've done it before. Everybody's done it before. They're playing late at night, past their bedtime, with toys and all that. And I already kind of want to point out something interesting here, which will be, again, interesting later on in the movie, is that one of the kids, we'll learn their names in a little bit. One of the kids is playing with this recording device. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I don't think it's like those radios that happen to be in a kid's toy. I do think it's a recording device because if I remember correctly, it does have a microphone attached to it. That seems like an important detail to me. While the kids are playing, we see various shots of just, random places in the house, especially upstairs. And it seems that the kids are looking for their dad. We don't know exactly where their dad is at, but we can also assume, because it's nighttime, that he might be sleeping. He's probably already asleep, getting ready, or sleeping, for work the next day. So that's probably what's going on. While all of this is going on is that we do get, like I said, shots of random darkness. I don't think these shots are just for nothing. I think those shots are important as they not only establish like the mood of the movie, the theme, but I think that these shots are supposed to represent something lurking in the shadows. Something is supposed to be in the shadows, staring back at us or the kids. So we're going to see a whole lot of that in the movie. So keep look out for that. As it continues on, the movie kind of pushes forward. We get a shot of what seems to be downstairs because there's a TV, and the TV seems to be on with nobody watching it from what we can assume because we saw the kids upstairs playing. It does shut off on its own, which again is another interesting point. We don't exactly know if in that timeline of the movie the kids went downstairs or watching something and probably just turned it off to go back upstairs. We can assume pretty much either or, but I think it just shut off on its own. We get to a point where we start seeing random shots of pictures in frames, probably downstairs, maybe somewhere else in the house, but we see pictures of people. Now, these could be, family, friends, obviously. And something, again, interesting to note is that one of the pictures, well, most of the pictures, we can't exactly make out fine details in the faces themselves. One of the pictures, we get this, what appears to be maybe a woman. And I find that one interesting because on a first watch, you don't really connect the two dots, but I've watched it about 3 times, I think now. And there's significance to that specific picture. We'll see later on in the movie, and I'll talk about it at that point in time. So we get to a point in the movie where it's just, the same thing kind of happening. The kids are playing, they're looking for their dad, obviously. And it gets to a point where Kevin, which we haven't been properly introduced to his name yet, but the little kid's name, the boy, his name is Kevin. We start getting random shots of him kind of just in the darkness, sitting in the hallway, looking up, looking around him. And again, that's another interesting point. Well, who exactly is he playing with? Because it can't be his sister and the other little kid that's with him. Because if they're little kids, then she's obviously not going to be that tall. So he's obviously looking up at something that's far bigger than a child. We don't know that yet. So at this point in the movie, maybe it's just a little kid doing little kid things in the middle of the night because, that's not creepy at all. But we get these shots of the stairs, which I really love the way these look in the movie. They're just creepy on their own, but within the context of the movie, it adds fuel to the fire. We kind of get a glimpse, just a tiny little glimpse of Kevin sitting at the very top of the stairs. And at that point, he's still assumably, is that even a word? I don't think that's a word. He's still presumably playing with whatever that thing was, his imaginary friend. We still get, more shots. And then from a distance, we hear what sounds like a tumble, somebody falling down the stairs. This is where I want to really put a lot of attention into the movie. This sequence of events right here. Dad wakes up, scoops up Kevin, right? And it sounds like he immediately gets into a car and drives away. Now, as far as what actually happened in the timeline of the movie, he could have done exactly that, or he could have got the little sister also as well. But from what we see in the movie, it just seems that he took Kevin only. Now, that is extremely interesting to me. Like I said, even today, I was thinking about things. So I want to just put a pin in that really quick so I can kind of go forward a little bit. So Dad and Kevin leave the house, and as they're gone, the TV downstairs turns on its own. So like I said, did he actually take the sister with him when they went to the hospital? Because if he was in such a rush, would he really take his sleeping daughter with him? Maybe. I mean, she's a little kid. Why wouldn't he take her with him? If, it doesn't matter what hour of the night it was, you would still take a child that small with you if something, happened, regardless of what is going on. Again, I also want to point out that the TV turned on. And I'm going to get to this other thing too. The TV turning on isn't the only thing that's making me second guess. So the TV turns on and there's a cartoon playing on the TV. And like a few minutes after that, not really in the movie, but like in the movie's timeline, a few minutes or something, maybe 30, the TV turns off immediately because the noise from Dad and Kevin coming home is setting off whatever is watching the TV. So it turns off, and we don't see what's going on, but we can assume that he puts Kevin to bed, maybe. And then there's also an interesting point right here in the movie where, again, it's just Dad walking around, and then we hear him coming into a room, and then he whispers, "Kaylee." And that's the little sister's name. He whispers Kaylee, and I don't know about you, but I don't know why you would call out somebody's name if maybe you were putting them to bed. If you were calling out a kid's name, you know, putting them to bed, why would you do that? I know for a fact that toddlers, that's what the age range, I think they're about 4 and 6. Why would you wake them up if they're already asleep? That line right there of him whispering Kaylee, it just sounds like he's checking to make sure that she's still asleep, maybe. Or maybe she's not in her room and he's just checking or something, I don't know. That's why I'm saying, you know, the TV turning on, it could indicate that Kaylee turned on the TV herself and was watching something while they were gone. I don't know, but that sequence of events is just extremely interesting to me, and I would highly encourage you to go watch it for yourself and, you know, just tell me what you think. And then we get to another interesting point where the dad calls somebody. He is talking about, you know, what happened to Kevin. He took Kevin to the hospital. He's just discussing about what happened. And then he says something along the lines of, "He's fine." I think I remember it was only something along, something about having a few stitches, and it wasn't that serious.
So he's fine, but Kevin fell down the stairs and hit his head. No, they didn't even need to do stitches. Kaylee says he was sleepwalking.
Little kids fall down all the time and hurt themselves, and it looks way worse than it could be. And, you know, other times it could be extremely worse than what it looked like. The dad tells the person on the phone that Kaylee, the little girl, said that Kevin was sleepwalking. Now, whether or not that's important to the movie itself, I don't really think so. I think that's kind of just like a throwaway line to kind of explain why he was at the stairs and, you know, what happened at the stairs. So I don't think that's important, so we can kind of skip. Another key point in this movie we get to right here. So Dad hangs up the phone. He goes to sleep. What else would he be doing in the middle of the night? He goes to sleep. Then we get kind of another shot that's kind of similar to the beginning of the movie, where we see the kids kind of just wake up and kind of come out into the hallway. I believe it's Kaylee. I think it's Kaylee who comes out of the room or the hallway. She kind of looks around, and then she goes into this darkness. And she fetches Kevin. So now we have both Kevin and Kaylee awake again in the middle of the night. And they're just walking around and they're looking. And it's really weird because it seems to me that they woke up and they almost don't seem to recognize where they're at. Now, obviously they're still in the house. From what we can see with the different lighting going on, it's still their house. And why would they be walking around kind of confused, at least from what it looks like to me? So we come to find out that Dad has disappeared. They try looking for him, they go to his room, and they can't find him anywhere. And we know that he didn't just leave the house again. Maybe he did, but speaking in terms of the movie here, he didn't leave the house. He obviously wouldn't leave two little kids by themselves in the middle of the night. So he's gone, he's out of the picture. Don't even think about him anymore, at least for right now. And the kids are looking for him. They're, calling out for Dad. They can't find him anywhere. Weird stuff starts happening in the house. They kind of go downstairs, they look around, and they start noticing that the windows and the doors and essentially anything that leads to the outside world has disappeared and is disappearing right before their eyes.
Where did they go?
That's happening. They don't really react to it as you would expect yourself to react to it because, let's be honest, they're little kids. I don't think they understand the gravity of the situation that they're in. They're downstairs and, they say, hey, how about we sleep downstairs tonight? So they do that. They get some, pillows, blankets, put some cartoons on. We start getting these shots that kind of just start peering into darkness. Remember how I said it early in the movie that these aren't just random shots, at least, for me, they're not random shots. What's going on here? There's something in the shadows and it's staring right back at, Kevin and Kaylee. It's staring at them. And it's only gonna get even more apparent from here, so just keep an eye out. We get no passage of time, at least for the kids themselves. They don't really know if it's day or night. What else can they do? But they go to sleep because the last thing that they remembered was it was nighttime. They wake up. No passage of time. They just think it's time to wake up. And Kaylee says she's gonna go upstairs to get some things. So she goes upstairs. She notices that the nightlight in the hallway is disconnected. Weird, right? Because nobody disconnected it. Why would the kids disconnect the nightlight? It's disconnected on the ground and she's staring at it, wondering who did it, just like we are. And as she's looking at it, she kind of looks up and looks over at the room next to it. And remember again, shadows. So there's probably something meant to be there staring right back down at Kaylee and us as we're looking up at the shadows. And I don't exactly know the layout of the house, but I believe this to be the parents' room. I think it's the parents' room. So don't hold me on that, but yeah, that's what I think it is. She reconnects the nightlight and she turns off the hallway light. She goes back downstairs. As she goes back downstairs, something disconnects it. We kind of start getting the feeling that these kids are not alone, at least not them too. So the kids are downstairs. Another interesting thing about this movie is that it kind of gives us just a teeny tiny little bit of hints as to what the story, really basic pieces of what the story could be, or at least what's going on. We see a cartoon playing on the TV and it's these two kids. They're going to sleep in their beds and we see them kind of just dozing off and they start kind of just rising up into the air. Now this is really interesting to me because back in those types of cartoons, like, the 20s, 30s, those types of cartoons, whenever a character went to sleep, I don't remember them ever, kind of just flying off into the air, into a dream state, at least from what I remember. I mean, I might be mistaken, but what I do know is that in those types of cartoons, when a character was implied to die, their spirit would raise up into the air. Not from what I remember ever seeing, but if it was the opposite, they would just the cartoon kind of gives us a little bit of just help guiding us with the story. So remember that. Kaylee wakes up and we see her staring into the darkness. She's looking at something or someone in the darkness, and whatever is in the darkness is kind of staring back at her. Kaylee, I'm really sorry, I don't remember who it was, but Kaylee or Kevin, one of those two asked, "Why is mom crying?" Kaylee, I believe, is the one that says, "I don't want to talk about mom." Weird. And then Kevin after that says, "Why has no one come yet?" That right there is pretty interesting to me. I'm going to say that a whole lot in this video, in case you haven't heard yet. I believe that the mom is not in the house, obviously, because it's just them two. But the mom crying has something to do with the events of that story. I don't want to kind of explain it all the way just yet, but that's where I'm going to leave it at. More shots of darkness, a abrupt noise being made.
Maybe we should just...
And it stops the kids talking, and we hear another noise be made.
What was that?
The kids go and see what that noise was, and they go over to the kitchen area, or the kitchen hallway area, something like that. And they both see that it's a chair up on the ceiling, kind of just hanging out right there. And now we definitely know for a fact that they're not alone, and whatever else is in the house with them is not human. Kaylee says after this point that they should be quiet. So now at least Kaylee is aware that something bad or maybe scary is in the house and they need to be quiet. The kids, obviously think that the dad went with mom, whatever that could mean. They don't want to talk about mom, as was said earlier. So the kids go to sleep again, and then we see more darkness. I think this might be a little bit of comedic relief within the movie itself. It's about the only comedic relief in the movie, where they need to use a toilet and they've come to find out that the toilet is gone. They go upstairs and Kevin tries to use the toilet upstairs, and while he's doing that, Kaylee goes into, I'm assuming it's her room or shared room with Kevin, and she's looking around and she sees kind of dolls thrown all over the place. Something catches her eye to where she starts looking up until she gets to a doll on the ceiling, which I think if you've never seen the movie, you might have seen that as a promotional artwork for the movie, or scene from the movie. And she's looking up at it, and we get a jump scare. The first in the movie, 3 more to go. I don't like it, but whatever. You gotta do something, right? Kevin says that he couldn't go to the bathroom. Okay, whatever. So they go back downstairs and they just throw a bucket, call it a day. We see the cartoon again. This person is calling and controlling a bunch of birds. I think it's alluding to the movie a bit more. Maybe something in the house is able to attract children to it somehow, like Pennywise from It, something like that. And there's more darkness again. Kids sleep again. We see Kaylee staring into the darkness for the millionth time in this movie. For the first time in the movie, we finally hear whatever's in the house with them call out. And it calls out to Katie saying, "Come upstairs." She goes upstairs and she goes to her parents' room. And I think this next scene right here is just one of the most high tension inducing scene that I have seen in a horror movie within like the last 5 years. She goes into the bedroom, she's walking slowly, and now we're kind of at the POV of Kaylee, sorry. And we're kind of just looking where she's looking at. And we see a bed, and then we see the figure of a man sitting on the edge of the bed. And it's, oh look, it's Dad. Has he been here this whole time? What's going on here? So she walks up to Dad, and she's just kind of looking at him. We don't see his face. We don't see anybody's face for that matter in this movie. She's kind of just right up to him within arm's length. He speaks to Kaylee, "Look under the bed." And so she looks under the bed, and we're kind of expecting a jump scare under the bed, where when she comes back up, nothing happens. Weird, something should have happened, right? He says, "Look under the bed again." Oh, something's gonna happen now, right? So she looks under the bed again, comes back up, and Dad is gone. Dad is gone again for the second time. This is a really bad father, She looks across the bed and she sees a new player in this movie. We see who we assume to be the mom, and we are right in assuming that. She's just sitting there just like Dad was when she entered the room, and she says to Kaylee, "Your father and I," and she gets interrupted by a noise off screen. And she kind of perks up. It's really weird. She perks up when she hears that noise. Like it wasn't startling her, but more of an annoyance that it happened. And then she says, "We love you and Kevin very much." Now, why would you say that? That sounds like something you would say to a child or children in an event of like tragedy, like a divorce, something bad happening, and you're kind of just trying to reassure your kids, calm them down or something. Keep that in mind. We're not done yet. The mom says to Kaylee, "Kaylee, I need you to close your eyes." She closes her eyes for not like a couple seconds. She opens them up, and to no one's surprise, mom is gone. She slowly starts looking around over here to where we haven't seen, and I think it's like a closet or like a bathroom. It's probably a bathroom, and there's, it's just more darkness. Can't see. There's like a dresser, I think, right next to it, and there's darkness. What really starts to ramp up the scene is that we start hearing noises again, but it isn't like we've heard before. These are entirely new noises. I think it's like a bone sounding, like a bone breaking sound going on, and it's just really inhuman, not a normal human noise going on. Mom is heard again saying, "There's someone here, Kaylee, you need to go back downstairs, okay?" What's going on? Don't ask me. And then we get to the second jump scare of the movie. I'm kind of okay with this one. I mean, it's still a jump scare. I'm not a fan of jump scares. I don't usually scare with jump scares. I just don't like being startled. And we see something put their hand out against the frame. I think it might be a human hand. I can't tell because of all the noise in the movie, but yeah, that happens. And then, Kaylee is obviously freaked out by that. So we assume that she kind of rushes back downstairs. Kevin obviously asks, "Where did you go?" Kaylee doesn't answer that, but she does say to help her move the couch. They move the couch up against that little segment where it connects the living room to the dining room and the stairs. They sleep again, and I think here is where I want to kind of discuss this little key point in the movie. So the kids keep sleeping, right? I think it's about like their third time sleeping that we know of in the movie since the beginning of the movie. Now, I think what is happening when they're sleeping is that they are traveling into a further plane of existence in the house. And this will all kind of make sense at the end of the movie when I try to explain what my theory is going on, but just bear with me here. So every time they sleep, they go further into another plane of existence that exists in this house. And as they go further into this plane of existence, I believe whatever entity is in the house with them doing all of this is getting stronger. Their influence is becoming more apparent. We can see it more. The kids are starting to feel it and see it more. So again, keep that in mind, but that's what I think is going on. And so we get another shot of darkness again, but this time we hear breathing. And I don't think it's the kids because we haven't heard the kids audibly breathing, at least when they're sleeping. So we hear breathing coming from the darkness. And like I said earlier, this presence is getting stronger each time they sleep and go further into this existence. And we hear breathing. Kaylee isn't the one to answer this call. It's instead Kevin. Kevin calls out to Kaylee. Kevin can't find Kaylee anywhere. There's more darkness, and again, breathing is heard. And here is where I think Kevin and Kaylee separate. They separate into maybe different dimensions, or maybe Kevin goes further into the dimension, because at this point Kevin is sleeping again. He goes to sleep, and so he himself is traveling further into this dimension with Kaylee kind of out of the picture for the moment. So while Kevin is sleeping, remember, this entity is getting stronger, and with it getting stronger, we start to see things kind of moving around. And it's obviously not Kevin, at least from what I assume, because they're kind of just a bunch of little things are moving around. And we see that they're moving around up onto the walls, up on the ceiling. So, you know, it's obviously not Kevin. He's not doing that. At some point, Kevin wakes up, and now the voice is calling to Kevin. And it says to come to the basement. Kevin goes to the basement. Kevin hears Kaylee calling out to him. Weird, you know, why is Kaylee here all of a sudden? Why is she calling out to Kevin in the basement? But something sounds off. And it sounds like she's muffled, like there's tape over her mouth or something. So he's looking around still, and then we get to a shot of somebody's legs kind of crossed together, sitting down. Maybe this is Kaylee, right? And then we get another jump scare. So it is Kaylee, but then now we see that her mouth is gone. Here is where I want to kind of put in a pin in the movie real quick and talk about xethrocc, the director of this movie's short film on YouTube, which I'm going to be kind of spoiling the ending for that movie. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's only like 30 minutes, so you're not really going to waste your time. So in that movie, kind of the same premise happens where this child wakes up kind of by himself in the house and he's just kind of looking around. It gets to the point, the climax of the movie, where he goes into his mom's bedroom. And he's looking at his mom. It's supposed to be a jump scare kind of thing going on, but he looks up at the mom and he sees that the mom's mouth is also kind of the same that Kaylee's is. At the end of that short film, it's kind of discovered by the child himself that they're in hell. They've been there for thousands of days or something like that, as the captions say. But yeah, it says that they're in hell, or xethrocc, you know, the title of the film. Interesting, you know. The child is in hell for whatever reason, and the mom is there with them too. I don't know if you're starting to see where I'm getting at with this movie, but you know, you can draw comparisons, parallels to both of these movies, and you can kind of see what I'm getting at here. But anyway, back to Skinamarink. Her mouth is gone, and they're obviously not in the real world. And like I said, they're probably in another dimension, and this entity is getting stronger, and now it's able to kind of enforce its will physically, you know, visually on these kids. Kevin, you know, probably runs out of there, gets the hell out of there, comes back upstairs, and we don't see what he's doing, but there's a cartoon playing. It's opening a bunch of doors, right? It's opening a bunch of doors. And I think this kind of both represents what I talked about, how there's multiple dimensions, the same plane of existence, but there's multiple dimensions in that existence. And these kids are just kind of going through the motions of going through each of those doors. All this terrorizing has made him hungry, and he's eating. And we hear the voice call out again to Kevin. And then we see more darkness, so you know, we definitely know that it's looking right at Kevin. We hear the voice say sleep. Like, not a suggestion, but like a command. Like a, you know, a magic word. It tells him to sleep. And so we assume that he does sleep because something falls. I think it was a juice box or something. And he's out, you know, he's out. The toys all over the walls, and then the cartoon. We get back to the cartoon. I think this strongly indicates that time in this dimension is being controlled by the entity. And now the further that they went into it, they got to this threshold where the entity can, you know, kind of manipulate time, not a whole lot, but somewhat now. And it's represented through the cartoon that we're seeing here. And we see it with this white rabbit messing with this dog, I believe it was in the cartoon. He's messing with them. I think that this rabbit is a stand-in for the entity. It's messing with the dog, and the dog could obviously, you know, maybe it could represent the kids, maybe not. Kevin wakes up, so he's deep in this dimension now. He's probably gone to a point where the entity can really control time now. and we're gonna see that. And here we see Kevin playing with some toys. I think it was Legos, and the entity says that it wants to play. At first, it seems like Kevin kind of ignores it, and I think that's what is implied to have happened. And it calls out to him again, and like I said, Kevin might be ignoring the entity, and to show that, you know, it's annoyed, it kind of forcibly opens a kitchen drawer. We see shots of darkness, so I mean, I don't even have to explain it to you. He's staring at Kevin. The cartoon gets to a point where it's still messing with the dog, but now we see that the cartoon rabbit, it's vanishing itself. The rabbit vanishes, you know, it makes itself disappear in a cartoonish way, obviously. But again, this is also, I think, representing that the entity is able to control its reality. So Kevin is sitting and panting in the darkness now by himself. Kaylee is nowhere to be seen, and he's panting. He sounds like he's actually scared for the first time in this movie now, like audibly and visibly, I guess. He is scared. The voice calls out, and the cartoon, it repeats, and then the voice says to put the knife in your eye. What exactly that's going to achieve? Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious, but we know that the entity, for some reason, wants to torture these kids, and it's already tortured Kaylee, and it's about to do it to Kevin. Kevin does it. If he did it on his own, or if the entity kind of forced his hand to do it, we don't know, but he does do it. And we hear it. We hear Kevin crying out in the darkness. It's very sad, very heartbreaking. We don't see anything, but just that sound of it is sad. Then we see more darkness. So we see the top of someone's head. Now, I don't think this is Kaylee, because the camera angle is kind of looking up more at the ceiling. At least from what I remember, it's looking up more at the ceiling, the door frame of a door. So I don't think it's Kaylee. It could be the mom. And I say this because at the end of the video, my theory, I'll explain it a bit more. I say this though because I think the entity is both using the rabbit and the mom as kind of a face to, you know, torture the kids, you know, from the earlier when that scene of the mom sitting at the edge of the bed and she disappears and she says that weird thing to Kaylee, there's somebody here, you need to go back downstairs. That's why I'm saying that. I'm saying, I think it's Kaylee, or not Kaylee, I think it's the mom. And the entity is, you know, using that mom's face to look down, and it's looking down at Kevin, wherever he is, sleeping or sitting down on the ground. It's staring at him. Now, I think my theory of this being the mom looking down might fall apart because this next scene might contradict that, but I think it might be Kaylee this time sitting on the ground. We have no reason to believe it could be the mom sitting on the ground, but I think it's Kaylee. It's kind of hard to tell because we don't really get a good look at Kaylee's hair and the mom's hair. There's somebody sitting on the ground in front of the TV, total silence. The TV isn't on. Is it on? I think it might be on, I don't remember, but sitting on the ground, and they just disappear. Remember what I said, that the entity is getting stronger, and I think it's at a point now where I don't think the children have to sleep to progress further into this dimension. I think it's able to just at will kind of just snap its fingers and take them to another dimension. And I think that's what happened here with Kaylee. She just got, you know, brought to another dimension from this one that she was currently in right now. And then we hear a odd noise. We hear a phone, the hung up noise heard from a corded phone. This is the first time where we think Kevin might be able to do something here. So Kevin goes up to the phone, starts dialing, he dials 911, and the dispatcher picks up. And that conversation goes on. And we think that there might be hope here. You know, there might be an escape for Kevin. And it goes on until it gets to a point where Kevin says that there's somebody here, there's something here. After that happens, he drops the phone and there's more darkness. Kevin is looking around the house afterwards, you know, kind of trying to see what's going on here. He looks at the toy phone and he says, Kevin, he says, did you do that? That part is the entity mocking Kevin, you know. It's pretty much dangling like a little bit of freedom in front of Kevin, and it just snatched it away. Then we hear more of that inhuman laughing, whatever the hell that is, laughing out in the darkness somewhere in the house. It's just laughing at Kevin, you know, for that joke he just pulled off. And we see Kevin sitting again in darkness. Everything seems to have moved back into place. It starts talking to Kevin, and it says to Kevin that it can do anything that it wants, and that Kaylee, the reason it took Kaylee's mouth away is because she didn't do as she was told to do. She said that she wanted her mom and dad. Kevin goes upstairs and he's just kind of looking around, right? And then we get to this weird part in the movie where he's all of a sudden up on the ceiling. And it's still the same house, you know, same layout, everything, but now he's on the ceiling and he's just looking around. He's on the ceiling and we hear the voice say to keep going. And I think at this point, it's the entity not wanting to just snap him into another dimension, but it's making Kevin walk into it himself. He walks into another dimension. We get this shot of a bunch of toys in a toy house, and earlier in the movie we have that recording thing with the microphone right here. We have this hallway, and it doesn't look like anything in the house that we've seen or have been able to see, but it's there, and the camera starts zooming out, and we start seeing that the hallway is a bit longer and longer and longer until it gets to a point where it's not possible in the house. It's obviously not in that same dimension. This is a whole other dimension. It's distorted. It's part of the house. It looks like the house, but it's just been distorted to this thing right here. The other probably well-known part of the movie, for those that have seen it anyway, the 572 days. I believe that this indicates that what has been going on this entire movie up until this point has been happening for 572 days. Now, to kind of discuss that a little bit before I go on, a lot of people think that that could possibly mean that Kevin has been in a coma, and he's been in a coma for, what is that, like about a year and a half, almost 2 years. And he's been in a coma, and this whole thing has been just like a fever dream in the coma that he's been having. Now, yeah, I mean, that could be an explanation in the movie. It's a pretty good explanation. I don't think it's that simple, just for the fact that Kaylee is in the dream with them. And obviously you can dream about other people in your dreams, and, you know, bad things can happen to them as well. But for the sake of the movie, I don't think that's what's going on, in my opinion, which I'll get to a bit later in the movie. We get to this other shot of a person sitting at the edge of a bed, and I think this time it might be the mom. I don't think it's Kaylee. I think it's the mom, because we saw, you know, that similar scene earlier of the mom and dad sitting on the edge of a bed. So I think it's the mom. She's just sitting there, and another cool little shot in the movie where she's just kind of slowly disappearing from existence. We hear a voice, another voice heard. I think it might be the mom's, I'm not exactly sure, but we do hear something. We see the living room, it's upside down, and I think this indicates that it's either restarting or the entity is getting ready to restart this whole thing once again. You know, better start that movie over again because it's about to happen. We see like a toy house off in the distance, which again is another representation of what's going on here as the entity sees, you know, the house and the kids as a bunch of toys, playthings. We get to Kevin just shining the flashlight at a bunch of things around the house, doors, walls, and then we get to the fourth and final jump scare in the movie where he looks at the toy phone with the flashlight and he's just looking at it, and then, you know, its eyes look up at him because, you know, apparently that's a jump scare that's really scary and it warrants its own noise and everything. Thanks, I hate it. There's this really weird, I don't know what it is. I just, the first time I saw it, even right now, I still don't know what it is, but he's looking at the stairs, and as he's looking at the stairs, something kind of comes into view. I think like it's in the middle of the stairs, kind of at the bottom. I don't know what it is, but it just looks weird, and it kind of frightens me every time I see it because I just don't know what it is. But yeah, he's just looking around, don't know what it is. And then we hear the voice call out again. It could be whatever we saw on the stairs, it could be that's calling out. Maybe that was the entity actually making an appearance. And then there's more darkness. We see shots of picture frames around the house. Kind of just looking at the picture frames like the beginning of the movie where we can't make out the faces. None of them have a distinguishable enough face to make out. And on top of that, they seem to be kind of melting or vanishing, whatever you want to call it. But, you know, they don't look right. And they're not normal pictures, obviously. We get to a part in the movie where there's a shot of the corner of a hallway, I believe, and we see a splatter of blood, a lot of blood, kind of just fall on the floor. And we hear screaming, which I believe to be Kevin. We hear that going on. And we see that it's repeating to the sound of the cartoon from earlier. And it's just repeating, and it does it again, repeats, does it again. So this is the entity obviously torturing Kevin, maybe physically by itself, or maybe it's making Kevin stab himself in the eye again. I don't know, but that's what's going on. And this right here is what's been going on for 572 days. That's happening. We hear someone call out, "Mommy, can we watch something happy?" And so I think that might have been Kevin asking his mom, "Can we watch something happy?" So I don't know exactly where this is in the timeline. Maybe it's like in a weird spot before the movie starts, or maybe it's at the very tail end of its, you know, sequence and it's about to restart. So somewhere along the lines, that's where that's going on. Maybe, you know, his mom is actually there with him, or again, like I said, maybe the entity is appearing as his mom, and that's why he's saying that. We get another shot of just, you know, abstract stuff going on. We see a door kind of surrounded by darkness, and I think this is to represent that, you know, we're gonna restart, or, you know, hold on, we're about to walk through this door and restart. So that might be what that represents. We see more darkness, and then we hear a sound that we haven't heard, at least not as loud in this movie. We hear like a void sound, like something you would hear when you stare into this giant, massive hole. We hear, you know, emptiness, that void sound in this darkness, which I think is the entity kind of just scrapping everything and getting ready to restart. Maybe he's already opened the door. That's what's behind the door, that void. We just see, you know, noisy darkness. Very, very noisy, very noisy. I love that. Very noisy darkness. And then we start to get a glimpse of something in this darkness. We see a face. We don't see it exactly, but we see like just a very small indication that it could be a face. Now, I actually looked this up, and people have kind of brightened up the darkness. And it doesn't make it any better. It still looks pretty terrifying. I'll probably kind of put that up to show you. But yeah, we see this. We don't know who it could be. So we see this face, and Kevin asks, "What's your name?" It doesn't answer, but it says, "Go to sleep." Kevin says, "What's your name?" again. No answer. And that is where the movie ends. So with the movie ending right there, just before I get into my little theory, that face that we saw at the end, I think it might be their mother making a visual appearance, as far as visual appearances go in this movie. I say that because remember earlier in the movie we saw those pictures, and we saw this picture of a woman, but we couldn't make her face out. And it just, that kind of reminds me of this face right here. I think it might be the same face, and I think that might be their mother. I don't know, I don't have that answer 100%, but that's just what I'm gonna go with. So I think it's the entity looking at Kevin, and it looks like his mother. But yeah, as far as the actual movie, that's the end of the movie right there. The theory I have personally for this movie is, at some point before the movie happens, the mom and dad are together, and they may or may not have, kids of their own. So Kevin might be the dads and Kaylee might be the moms. So they get together, they have kids outside of their respective marriage. They come together, and at some point, I think Kaylee dies. So before the movie, I think Kaylee dies. And this upsets the mother so much, as we've seen in, real world cases where a child dies, it kind of destroys a marriage, and it, rips the people apart. I think she leaves the husband, divorces the husband, whatever you want to go with. I think that happens. The mom leaves, so the dad is on his own. He's a single dad, and he's living with his son, Kevin, in this house. And during the beginning of the movie, we see two kids playing, right? Kevin and Kaylee. I believe that Kevin is playing with himself, and Kaylee is there because, remember that recording device thing, the toy that the kids have? I think that might have been some way that Kevin might have been communicating with Kaylee. Again, that's just a really far out theory that I have, but I think that's what's going on with that toy, that he's been communicating with Kaylee. Like you would record, and hear Kaylee's voice or something like that from the short time that he knew her. So that's going on. And then remember, we see Kevin kind of playing with something in the darkness. Now, it's probably not Kaylee because he's kind of looking up. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but that's what he's doing. The events of the movie happen. The dad picks up Kevin, takes him to the hospital. And that's another point where I wanted to say that Kaylee might not be alive or in the house with them, because it just seems pretty fast that he would pick up Kevin and, get in the car and drive away, at least from what we see in the movie. And remember, when he comes back, he has Kevin with him, and just that really weird scene, right, where he opens the door, maybe to a room or something, and he whispers, "Kaylee," like if he was looking for her or something. And I think that right there, it might be like past trauma or something like that, that's kind of messing with the dad's head. And for a split second, he thinks that Kaylee is alive and, sleeping in what was once her room. And so, he does that. He goes to check on Kaylee, and then he remembers, oh wait, yeah, Kaylee's not here. And so the person he starts talking to on the phone with, it might be his wife. Maybe, I don't know, like a year or 2 years have gone by that's been not dealt with, but they've reconciled their differences with that moment in time, that horrid event, that he calls his wife or his ex-wife or whatever, and is just telling him like, hey, Kevin fell. Not that you would probably care, but I just want you to know that the events of the movie kind of take place with Kevin probably being dead. Maybe he's in a coma, maybe he's dead, I don't know, but I for sure say that he's dead. And him being dead, it kind of throws him into this dimension where, his dad is obviously not there because his dad is alive still. And his dad sorry, his dad disappears, but Kaylee, makes an appearance. And that's why that part in the beginning of the movie where Kaylee kind of goes into the shadows, or Kevin, I think it's Kaylee, she goes into the shadows and pulls Kevin out. I think that might represent Kaylee kind of bringing Kevin into this dimension properly. Not that she had any ill intentions, but it was just her like, oh hey, Kevin's here. Let me just bring him over here. Hey, we're together again. I think that's what that might have been, but again, don't quote me on that. The part where Kaylee goes upstairs and she sees her dad, looks under the bed, and we see the mom, and the mom says that really weird line, your father and I love you and Kevin very much. I believe that might be like a dead memory, a past memory that Kaylee has of when she died before the movie, and somehow maybe she was in a coma or maybe she was on her deathbed, and her mom says that to her, and that's like one of the last things she hears. So that's what I think that is, and then the rest of that scene plays out. And another thing I want to add to that is that I'm kind of debating myself on the mom being alive or dead, because like I said, the dad calls somebody. I can't say if it's the mom or somebody else, but he calls somebody. But let's just say that the mom is dead. So the mom exists in this universe as well, right? Maybe the dad too, but again, that's just gonna convolute my theory. So the mom might be dead, and so the mom doesn't exactly know what's going on because maybe this dimension is only really meant for kids. But I'm probably just gonna say that the mom is not in this dimension, or at least like the actual version of herself. It's just like, cosmetically, the mom is here because the entity is just messing with the kids. The kids get deeper into the dimensions, and then, at a certain point they separate, and now they're in different dimensions respectively. The next part of the movie, or part of the theory, is that when it gets to the 572 days of the movie, I believe that to be either Kevin existing in this dimension, the kids existing in this dimension for that long, or it could probably somehow mean Kaylee, being dead for that long. And then remember that recording device from earlier? I think it makes an appearance here because, again, like I said, Kevin might have been using that to contact Kaylee unknowingly, he just heard a voice in it. So I think that's why it's making an appearance here. Again, I'm just kind of stitching this together. It's pretty weak. Somebody might kind of see plot holes in that, but that's what I think. And, if somebody wants to, help me with that theory, go ahead. And I mean, as far as the rest of that theory goes, that's pretty much it. The rest of the movie kind of plays out exactly how I would expect the rest of that theory to go, right? The mom is being used as a mask by the entity to torment the kids, and yeah, that's essentially it, really. Oh yeah, and then before, I think I kind of forgot something. Let me just add it right now. The part of the movie when the kids kind of start getting into this madness, where Kaylee says that why is mom crying, right? And then that they don't want to talk about mom. Again, this could refer to Kaylee hearing somebody, or Kevin hearing somebody crying when Kaylee was dead or dying. And that's another dead memory. We don't actually hear a person crying. I don't think so. You might have to really crank up the volume, but I don't think we hear somebody crying. It's because, maybe they would just be sad if they talked about mom crying. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's kind of the end of what I have to explain about Skinamarink and my theory itself. Overall, I think the movie was pretty good. It's not meant for everybody, and I can understand that completely. It's really an avant-garde-ish movie. It's very artsy. It's very experimental. There's really nothing else like it except, if you probably get into the underground scene for movies, you'll probably find something similar to it. But as far as mainstream movies, this is pretty new. The closest thing that I can think of that would come close to this movie is probably like a found footage, the genre itself, not a specific movie. But yeah, I mean, I love the movie. If you're watching this, you probably love the movie too, or you at least want to kind of get to know what the hell is going on. Don't take my word for it. I'm not saying that this is exactly what happened in the movie. There's a couple of other people that have their own theories, or maybe even similar to what I have. And there's actually one person that I would recommend you guys watching. I don't want to say his name for obvious reasons, but yeah, I would go check this person out because he actually made a pretty fantastic video, which inspired me to make my own video on Skinamarink. One thing I want to say, and it's kind of more of like a closing thought, kind of, that I think this movie, it's pretty relevant today, at least when it came out, because of the analog horror scene that's going on YouTube at the moment. It's been going on for like 10 years now, so it's not really anything new, or at least close to 10 years, something like that. But I think that's what made it a pretty strong contender for horror movies in the first place, because a lot of people saw the trailer and, you know, they just assumed noisy visuals, you know, abstract camera angles, all that. It's gonna be an analog horror, something like that. It wasn't really like that, but it came close to it, which is why I think a lot of people were kind of disappointed with the movie. But I think, aside from that, I think it's a very important movie that was made. What I feel when I watch the movie, it does remind me of my childhood. And I think it'll remind a lot of you, depending on how old you are. I think anybody past the 90s, maybe the 80s, 70s as well. But mostly for the kids that grew up in that 90s, early 2000s, that have grown up right now, and they consume a lot of, now it's not a genre, but I mean, I think it's a genre. It's the liminal nostalgic horror that we kind of have been seeing going on, where it's like, you know, these buildings, these rooms, these hallways, these houses, you know, very, very noisy, you know, grainy, and it just matches the tone of the movie. And I think that's why this movie kind of left a pretty big impression on myself and a lot of other people that have watched the movie. And I hope that the director or somebody, you know, makes more of these types of movies, maybe a new spin on it, a new direction, just as long as it has an interesting story, and of course, you know, the visuals, because the story is one side of it, but the visuals, you know, that's a whole other monster to tackle, which if you don't know how to do, it's gonna make the movie bad. And that's pretty much all I have to say. You know, like I said, it reminds me of my childhood. It reminds me of those times where you kind of, you know, you were like, what, 5, 6 years old, and you were home and you slept, you know, you took a nap and you woke up at like 6, 7 p.m. You know, I guess like in that winterish time where the sun sets, you know, after that or before that time. And, you know, it's kind of already dark, right? And you kind of wake up super dazed. You kind of take a couple seconds to realize where you are. And you think you're by yourself. Maybe you are by yourself, and you kind of look, you know, walking around the house. And just for some reason, it's the most terrifying thing that you've done. It's scarier than an actual monster. It's scarier than, like, you know, other people. It's scarier than the scariest thing you can think of when you're that age. And you're just roaming the house looking for somebody, anything, any sign of life. And for some reason you think you're the only person, you know, in the world. That's what I feel like this movie kind of replicates, that feeling. I think it does a pretty good job, you know. I think it does. That's the exact feeling that I got while watching this movie. It's like somebody took a camera, put it in my memories, and just recorded that, you know. It visualized my childhood fears, and I'm sure, you know, many others that had that similar experience. If you got to this point, thank you for listening to me ramble about a movie, and I really like this movie, which I think I've said enough already. Thank you for watching this remade video again, if you were one of the first ones to watch it way back then. Again, thank you so much for watching. I hope to do more of these types of videos with a better, you know, get up. This is kind of uncomfortable. Kind of keeps sliding down on my mouth. better equipment, better background equipment. This is kind of all wrinkly, but I hope it works later on when I'm doing the editing. But yeah, again, thank you for watching, and I hope you stick around.